occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Morley III.
Hello, MacPack. It's great to be back with you. It's another episode of On the Move with Mac Worley. I, of course, am Mac Worley, and this is On the Move. This is the show that attempts to inspire you to stand up for your rights. We have an excellent show in store for you, and I'm not just patting myself on the back here. It's going to be full of all sorts of controversy and hypocrisy. And in fact, today's episode is actually titled Supreme Court Hidden Camera Hypocrisy. Court Tyranny, episode 64 of On the Move Show here. And like I said, it's going to be fun. It's going to be good times, a lot of analysis going on today. And as usual, you all are welcome to join the broadcast. You can do so in several ways. You can either give us a call at 360-450-5625. And by the way, for those of you out there keeping score, that was the first time that I memorized that number by heart. There we go. And anyway, then you can also give us a call at talk@onthemoveshow.com. Again, that is talk@onthemoveshow.com. You can also get us on Facebook, facebook.com/onthemoveshow, or message us on Twitter @onthemoveshow. And any of those ways you can participate in the conversation. We'd be happy to hear your thoughts and read your, whatever you had to say, and I'll comment on it. We'll talk. Just join the conversation. Feel free. Anyway, we have a lot going on today. Lots of different stuff to cover. I am, as usual, sitting on a stack of different news stories like waist high. It's ridiculous how much we have to cover. As I am talking quickly, we're going to try to get through it all today. Today's show, we're going to cover, as we always seem to forget, the Weekly Defender. It's my favorite segment. I don't know how I keep forgetting this. But then we're going to go into the Mac Attack segment, where we're going to cover our featured topics in detail. And those topics are the Supreme Court's hypocritical decision on how law enforcement uses warrantless hidden cameras on private property. This is an old decision, but we're going to talk about it because we haven't talked about it yet. And I also want to cover courtroom tyranny, some things that are particularly disturbing here. And I believe I just realized that I have messed up the Haywire Gulch. There we go. We're broadcasting now on Haywire. Those of you who are listening on Haywire, again, I made a mistake. I always mess this thing up. So I hit the wrong button. I hit the record button instead of the play button. That's my fault. Again, I apologize. So to bring you guys up to speed on Haywire, just to give you a heads up what you just missed, today we're talking about the Supreme Court's hidden camera decision, why it's hypocritical, and it is a bit old. It's a little old news. And anyway, I know we're bouncing around here, so let's slow it down here. I just want to mention to all of you out there, we broadcast every Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we discuss all things, liberty, guns, government, things along those lines. And you can listen to us on OnTheMoveShow.com, or we also simulcast at the same time at HaywireGulch.com, so you can listen to us over there as well. Anyway, let's move forward here, and I want to cover some topics that are, not really anything in our featured topics, but things that I heard this week, and I really wanted to talk about it and see what you guys had to say, if you guys had any thoughts. But first and foremost, I just recently heard about a new procedure that can change brown eyes to blue eyes. It's incredible. Now, this is not contacts. This is not anything that you put into your eye. They laser away the pigment from your eyes. I have an actual clip here from this, and I want to play it real fast for you guys. You guys, it's a very short clip, but you guys can hear it for yourself. It's amazing. If I can get it to load. There we go.
Now at 5 o'clock, don't it make my brown eyes blue? A new laser treatment promises to permanently change your eye color. Did you know only 17% of the world's population has blue eyes? Neither of us. But this controversial procedure could change that, and it comes at a steep price. Dr. Malik Marshall is here with more. Rather strange story.
Yes, so most of us, in fact about 80% of us, have brown eyes, and the only way to change that has been to wear colored contact lenses. But apparently there's a new procedure that can do it, as you said, David, permanently. Ophthalmologists say all of us have blue eyes beneath our brown eyes. Who knew? Under a thin layer of pigment or melanin. Now, a California company has created a laser treatment that disturbs the melanin and causes the body to get rid of it over time. So the procedure may last only seconds, but it may take weeks before the blue tint emerges. Now, it's not available here in the U.S. yet, but has been used on a few dozen patients overseas with success. Researchers claim it's safe, but have to conduct more clinical trials before they apply for FDA approval. Now, there are some ophthalmologists that are concerned that by tampering with the pigment in the eye, that this could cause blockages and possibly increase pressure in the eyes. The researchers say no. It's expected to cost about $5,000.
It seems like something you don't want to mess with. You don't want to mess with your eyes. But would you see people doing this?
I like my brown eyes.
I like them too, by the way.
I mean, I think blue eyes are beautiful too, and, you know, for whatever reason, a lot of people think blue eyes are associated with attractiveness and beautiful facial feature. I suspect there's going to be a pretty big market for this, worldwide at least.
And probably get cheaper over time, by the way, right? Starts at $5,000, goes a little bit lower maybe over time.
So maybe $4,800.
We'll hold out.
All right, so I just wanted to talk about that. And I find this kind of interesting that this is happening now. I know this probably isn't related, but many of you may know that Iran, actually, they named themselves Iran kind of as a nod to the Nazi party. All right, Hitler's. And what Iran actually does mean in, I believe it's Arabic. I'm not really sure what language they're speaking over there, but what it does actually mean, it translates to Aryan. So Iran, Aryan. I'm wondering with all the the Nazi, Islamo-Nazi propaganda that's going on, and a lot of the hate, a rise of anti-Semitism. I wonder if we're going to see a rise in Islamic communities to kind of reiterate the whole Aryan nation situation. Anyway, I'm just curious. It's a weird parallel I just kind of thought of just now. I'm curious if this is going to take off. But $5,000. I wonder if that's per eye, by the way. But $5,000 is pretty pricey. Pretty pricey. I can imagine that a lot of upper crust people are probably going to be looking into this. People who don't like their brown color eyes. I say, be proud of what you got. You guys, you have what you have, and be proud of it. I got green eyes. I like my eyes just fine, and I think brown eyes. My wife, for example, she's got brown eyes. I think she's got beautiful eyes. So I think you should just be happy with what you have. This is kind of one of those things that is kind of a little scary too. To me, anyway. I wouldn't trust somebody lasering away something out of my eye. I think I would be concerned with that, and you never know what kind of long-term damage that could cause. So anyway, moving on, I found another really weird and interesting story that I wanted to share from you, and this one is from abcnews.go.com, and I found this pretty interesting. It's kind of weird, but anyway, it's about a mother who has fled with her son to fight circumcision of her son. Now, I'll read the story here. This is an article written by Matt Sedinsky of the Associated Press, and the article is titled "Jail Looms for Mom Who Fled with Son to Fight Circumcision." A woman who fled with her son while fighting to prevent his circumcision will face imprisonment if she doesn't return and allow the surgery to proceed, a judge ruled Friday. This was on March 6, 2015, by the way. In a stinging rebuke of the mother, Heather Hieronymus, I guess, Circuit Judge Jeffrey Gillen said she had successfully dragged out the legal battle and was reprehensible for going missing with the boy, and her conduct that has put the 4-year-old in the public spotlight, making him an object of curiosity and worse. He found her in contempt and demanded that she appear in the court Tuesday with the child, or he would be commanded, or he would command the police to find her. So I find this kind of interesting, especially the father in this case. Because there's a big difference. Apparently, she didn't have any issue initially with having the circumcision on her child, and then suddenly she changed her mind. And I guess her and the father aren't together, but the father has called a circumcision just a normal thing to do. The mother said it's not worth the risks, and the court at some point here has decided that the father gets to win in this, and they're going to force the kid to have a circumcision. My question number one, this is a 4-year-old child. I wonder if the 4-year-old wants to have this done. And secondly, why is it something that can't wait until the boy gets older? If there's nothing that's really, life-threatening, no kind of situation that is currently happening that could put this child at risk, especially if it's a contentious situation like this, and both parents don't agree, I would say that why is the court ruling that this procedure where you take off a part of your body and it doesn't ever come back. It's not like you're going to grow that part of the body back. I find it astounding. I don't know all the ins and outs of this case, but I find it astounding that a court would rule to have the surgery when both parents don't agree. I would say that this would be something that should just be left to the kid when he gets older and decides. But anyway, I just thought I'd mention it. Not what the show is about today. I just thought it was something weird and interesting I wanted to bring up to you guys. And then our last weird and interesting story that we had for today, car owners are currently finding something very strange inside of their cars, and it's not something that was put there, after manufacturing. It was actually installed with the car. So these are Mazda 6 engines. Car owners are baffled as more tampons are found inside the engines. Yes, I said tampons. We're talking about woman's cleanliness, stuff like that. Woman magic. Anyway, so this is really an interesting article. It's written on thenationalreport.net. It was posted about 3 weeks ago, and I have no idea who wrote it. So I don't know. I think, Matt Rock. There we go. So feel free to look up that article. I just thought this was weird and interesting, something strange. So in the manufacturing process here in Mazda, somebody is basically sabotaging these cars. They're putting tampons inside of the pistons, actually built into the engine. So pretty weird, pretty interesting. Thought I'd bring it up. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on. It's time for my favorite part of the show. This is a segment that we like to call the Weekly Defender. So anyway, this topic or this segment of the show, we basically talk about armed citizens in the news who've used their firearms to defend themselves, their family, their property, something along those lines. So anyway, here we go.
And now it's time for the Weekly Defender. You have the right to defend your life, the right to defend your family, and the right to defend your freedom.
All right, our first Weekly Defender we found on KOCO in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Christopher David was at home asleep in Edmond, Oklahoma, when his dog alerted him to a bat-wielding intruder. Davis met the criminal at the front door, but the man forced his way inside and struck Davis with the bat. Davis responded by retrieving a handgun and fired at the home invader, striking him and causing him to flee. The intruder retreated to a nearby house and was captured by police a short time later. This was on February 17th, 2015. Our next Weekly Defender we found on Metro News in West Virginia. A masked man entered a Good Family Pharmacy in Pinch, West Virginia, and drew a gun on a store employee. The pharmacist on duty responded by retrieving a .45 caliber handgun and shooting the criminal twice in the chest. After the thief collapsed, the store staff attempted to help the wounded robber. However, he died a short time later. Following the incident, Kanawha County Sheriff's Department made clear that the pharmacist will not face charges. Neighbors expressed their support for the pharmacist, with one stating, "More power to him. One less thief, in my opinion. If he came to my house, I'd do the same thing." Another man who owns a neighboring business remarked, "Hopefully word gets around that this happened. Maybe there won't be anybody else try the same thing." Anyway, this was on the 18th of February, 2015. So, let's talk about these two stories here. First, we have somebody who was overpowered in the front door. I have no idea how old the first victim was here. Christopher David. No idea how old he was, but the bat-wielding intruder managed to push in the door, force his way inside, and this guy didn't have a gun. He had a bat. Criminals, even if they can't get guns, they can find a weapon. And it's important that we have the right. And it is not a privilege. This is a right. This is an inherent right of self-defense. And that means whatever we need to do that. We have the right to keep and bear arms, and that means whatever is available to us as far as technology is concerned. That there were no limitations provided on the Second Amendment. It said, in fact, it shall not be infringed. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So anyway, Davis, he responded to the man who forced his way inside his home, struck him with the bat, overpowered him. He responded by getting a gun and firing, striking him, causing him to flee. What better scenario can you possibly think of for the use of force? This man was not bothering anyone. He wasn't he wasn't doing anything. All of a sudden, somebody kicks in his door, essentially, and starts hitting him with a bat. Perfect example of when it should be okay to use force. I mean, this is absolutely, egregious what this criminal did, and I think this guy had every right to use this kind of force. And then also, I want to talk about this Metro News story here, the pharmacy shooting. I actually saw the video before I even found this story. I saw the video. They had the footage of that shooting online, and I actually saw it. It was crazy. So the everything happened really fast. The guy pulls out a gun. He was just standing there kind of with a hood on at first, and then he pulled out a gun, and the pharmacist responded like lightning. I mean, it was so fast, and he shot the criminal. You could see him collapsing as he was trying to run away, and there was nothing that he could do. And anyway, the police apparently say no wrongdoing from the pharmacist, and more power to him as far as I'm concerned too. So I think that you have an absolute right to defend yourself, and I like hearing about stories where an employee is either allowed to carry a gun in their job, like in this scenario. I've heard so many stories where a pharmacist or somebody working at a gas station or something late at night, and they're carrying a gun because they've been held up before. I've heard stories where they've been fired, and I really hope that this pharmacist does not get fired. I hope that he gets a promotion. Honestly, this is a good thing. It's one of those situations where you want to take the time to really feel out the situation and make sure that you're not going to put more people in danger. But if you have an opportunity, which this pharmacist saw, he saw an opportunity, he reacted quickly, and who knows how many lives he may have saved in that encounter. We don't know, but we do know that he protected property. And I think he had every right to do this. Personally, I love hearing about how law-abiding citizens use their firearms to protect themselves. You have a right to defend your life. You have a right to defend the lives of your family. You have a right to defend your property. And most importantly, you have a right to defend your freedom. We at On The Move, we support your rights. And if you have a story about how you lawfully defended yourself, or you would like to comment on one of these stories, we would love to hear from you. Give us a call. The number to the show is 360-450-5625. Again, that's 360-450-5625. Or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. Anyway, at this point, we're going to go ahead and cut to a commercial break. We'll be right back after this messages. Don't go anywhere.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On The Move with Mac Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mac Worley III.
And we're back. I appreciate y'all sticking with us. So, we've covered a lot of just randomness on this episode so far, but we're going to move into the next segment of the show in a moment here, and that segment is the Mac Attack, and it's where I give you my take on outrageous things in the news. Lots of different stuff that we're going to be covering in that episode, or in that segment. I do want to, however, play a little bit of an update here about our last topic. We were talking about net neutrality last episode, and I want to really cover this a little bit more because I find it particularly interesting. First of all, many of you may know, and last week I covered it, Netflix, they pay billions and billions of dollars to companies like Comcast to upgrade their services and ensure that they have a very large bandwidth provided to them. And obviously they got HD movies that they're streaming live. It's not like it's something that you just download and you have hours later. You have it right now. It's instant. So these billions of dollars that they provide to the to companies like Comcast, it's used to actually upgrade the services and dedicate this amount of bandwidth. And obviously, net neutrality, if the internet is being nationalized and it's essentially taxpayer upgraded and serviced from our money as opposed to Netflix's money, again, billions of dollars, obviously Netflix stands to gain. And, it doesn't surprise me that Netflix really stood out and was a big supporter of net neutrality, which I'm absolutely opposed to. And I told you all last week why. Mainly, it's not a free market solution; it's a big government solution. This is creating a problem that never existed. The internet is free right now. Not free as in charging, but it's free. We have the freedom. You pay for a service, you can use that service, and I think that's a free market solution. Right now, there is really no problem as far as I'm concerned. I think the internet's fine. But net neutrality, that we have the people who are supporting net neutrality, they believe that the internet is not fair, or at least even if it is fair right now, it has a potential to one day possibly in the future not be fair. But they believe that the answer to that is the government, and I believe that is emphatically wrong. I believe that is the worst thing that you can possibly do when you have something, especially if you have something that's working good, is to hand it over to the government. I think you're going to regret that decision. And it looks like Netflix, they may already regret their support for the FCC's new net neutrality rules, according to an article on Reason.com written by Peter Suderman. This is on March 15th. Over at Wired, Jeffrey Mann, the executive director at the International Center for Law and Economics, has one of the very best critical takes on the Federal Communication Commission's decision last week to overhaul the way broadband internet is regulated in order to enforce net neutrality rules. Mann makes a couple of points that are worth repeating. The first is that new regulations give agency license to go far beyond what supporters of the Title II net neutrality regime have said is necessary, and in doing so may actually inhibit more valuable and effective consumer protection regulations from the Federal Trade Commission. You were sold a bill of goods when sorry, I'm having a hard time speaking right now. You were sold a bill of goods when activists told you net neutrality was all about protecting the next Facebook from evil ISPs. Think about it. If you're the next Facebook, who do you think is more worried about you, your ISP or Facebook itself? If the problem is between Facebook and its potential challengers, hamstringing ISPs is an awful roundabout way of dealing with it, especially because we already have regulatory apparatus to deal with issues related to competition, antitrust laws. But consider this irony. Now that ISPs are regulated under Title II as common carriers, the Federal Trade Commission can't enforce its consumer protection laws against them anymore. That doesn't mean there won't be antitrust enforcement, but we did just hobble our most significant and experienced consumer protection authority. That seems like a mistake if we're enacting rules that purport to protect consumers. This may not be exactly how it all plays out, but it's not a bad bet. We don't know for sure, of course, in part because we haven't even seen the full FCC order yet. Indeed, according to an agency statement earlier this week, it hasn't even been finalized yet. So I'm skimming here. Let me go to where it actually talks about about Netflix here. Even staunch net neutrality supporters like EFF, which is the Electronic Frontier Foundation, worry about the breadth of the FCC's new general conduct standard. Couple that with language that invites complaints and class action lawsuits, and suddenly a regulation claimed to ensure just and reasonable conduct becomes a rent-seeking free-for-all. But surely ISPs have it in for Netflix, right? Actually, Comcast is the only ISP out of literally thousands that are now regulated under Title II that competes with Netflix. And the evidence shows that the problems allegedly arising from that competition were caused by Netflix, not Comcast. Did we really just enact 300 pages of legally questionable, erroneous, costly, transformative rules just to help Netflix in a trivial commercial spat? This is worth dwelling on for a moment, in part because Netflix was one of the most visible and widely covered supporters of the FCC net neutrality push that led to last week's decision. The company relished its role as the corporate leader in the fight for net neutrality. National Journal responded last September, and in doing so, backed a position that would protect its profits while earning goodwill for web activists and liberals. Netflix, in other words, is the company best positioned to benefit from these rules. Here's the punchline. It's barely been a week since the FCC's Title II order passed, and the video service is already expressing regret. Here's what CFO David Wells said at an industry conference earlier this week, according to Variety. Were we pleased it pushed to Title II? Probably not. We were hoping there might be a non-regulated solution. The company still insists that it is pleased with the ruling overall, but wishes that there had been no broadband regulation. But the point is that even if Netflix, the poster child for corporate support of SEC moves, is at a minimum not entirely pleased with the outcome, so if anything, the Title II overhaul might be even worse than what Mann suggests. We might have enacted 300 pages of drastic, dubious regulation just to help a company that didn't even want all those rules in the first place. So, sorry, I know that was long-winded. So I just want to kind of get around to this here. We have a company, Netflix, who was basically one of the biggest pushers of net neutrality, saying, it's unfair. We got to make sure that the internet is all fair and even and neutral. But first of all, they're not even happy with it. They're saying that we were hoping that there might be a non-regulated solution. Well, what were you doing at the FCC? What were you doing pushing for net neutrality? These are the people who are supporting net neutrality, and I've talked to a couple of them. And, one thing I have got around is that a lot of people they're in support of the idea of a neutral net. Yeah, who isn't in support of that? Everybody wants to have a free internet. Not free as in money, like just paid for by the government. No. Everybody wants a free as in freedom internet. Everybody wants that. Nobody's in disagreement of that. Nobody wants to see, opinions being choked out or people not being able to get their word out. But again, we're talking free market solutions, and this is a government solution. Those people who claim to be conservatives, who claim to be libertarian, who claim to be small government, but yet they support net neutrality, they really need to take a hard look at what they're saying. They're saying they support a big government solution. They support regulation. And again, what was Netflix thinking? They were hoping that there might be a non-regulated solution. Well, then what were you doing supporting net neutrality? It is a regulated solution. It's a government solution. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That is what it is. It's a government solution. And we've all seen how government runs their organizations. I mean, just look at the post office, the DMV. Everything that you've ever experienced that the government has its hands on, it's going to be fraught with fraud, waste, and abuse, and it's going to feel like pulling your teeth every time that you have to deal with it. It's going to be painful, and that's what the internet's going to end up being. It's going to be painful, especially if we don't do anything to fight this. At the bottom of this article, though, and one of the main reasons why I wanted to play it is because it has an entire interview. It's a 30-minute interview. We're not going to play the whole interview. I'm only going to play a couple minutes here. But I wanted to play this for you because this is an interview with an FCC commissioner. I believe his name is Ajit Pai. He voted against the new rules. So I'll go ahead and play a little bit from this clip and let you guys hear. If you guys are interested, you can just check it out at Reason.com. And it is, again, on the article, Netflix may already regret its support for the FCC's new net neutrality rules. So you can find it there. Anyway, here's a clip.
My concern, my sole concern, is what is going to deliver a better consumer experience in the digital age. And I truly believe that removing some of these regulations that are impeding IP-based investment and getting rid of some of these antiquated regulations is the best way to promote competition, promote consumer welfare, not these over-the-top, 80-year-old regulations that have been proven not to work.
Hi, I'm Nick Gillespie with Reason TV, and today we're talking with FCC Commissioner Ajit Pai. He is a proponent of an open internet, but not net neutrality. Ajit, thanks for talking to us.
Nick, it is great to be with you.
Recently, the FCC chairman, Tom Wheeler, said that he's going to move forward with the FCC regulating the internet under Title II regulations. And that'll change the regulatory structure from that of an information service to a telecom. What is the most important thing that people need to know about that switch?
I think the most important thing that people need to know is that this is a solution that won't work to a problem that simply doesn't exist. And let me tackle the latter part of that initially. Nowhere in the 332-page document that I've received will anyone find the FCC detailing any kind of systemic harm to consumers. And it seems to me that should be the predicate for
any
certainly
kind of
preemptive regulation, some kind of systemic problem that requires an industry-wide solution. But that simply isn't here.
So, I mean, you're saying the internet is not broken?
I don't think it is. No, I think by and large people are able to access the lawful content of their choice. And while competition isn't where we want it to be, we can always have more choices, better speeds, lower prices, et cetera. Nonetheless, if you look at the metrics compared to, say, Europe, which has a utility-style regulatory approach, I think we're doing pretty well.
What can we say?
So I want to comment on that for a second here, because first of all, we are faster. Our internet speeds are faster than over in Europe, that it already has it set as a utility, as we're trying to do now. We're trying to turn it into a utility, which will essentially nationalize the internet, and we'll probably end up where European speeds are now anyway. And why? Why is European speeds slower? Why would that be? Is it because the government runs it? Probably why. That money, again, the money that's being used to upgrade these internet networks and things like that, it's, some of it's coming out of your premium that you pay every month for your internet service itself, but then billions of dollars is being spent by companies like Netflix to actually dedicate broadband, and that dedication is given to them. They get a certain amount of speed guaranteed at that point for their customers. But in addition, it's used to upgrade those services. How much money do you think will just fall through the cracks once this money starts going to upgrade these things? How much money do you think will just fall through Uncle Sam's hands as he's trying to use it to upgrade the internet? Number one, they'll probably be less efficient at upgrading the internet speeds and trying to actually maintain. They probably won't even be able to maintain the speeds that we have now. All they have to do is maintain it. They probably won't even be able to do that, let alone upgrade. But you have to imagine every dollar that Uncle Sam gets, they put it into a bucket with holes in it. All right? That's your tax dollars at work. Every time they throw, $1,000 into a bucket, 300 of it suddenly just gets lost out the bottom. It just falls out the holes, gets shook out. Who knows where it went? It's out in the ether now. We don't know. And it's fraud, waste, abuse. Money just gets spent on stupid things, number one. Money just gets wasted. Fraud takes place. People get lazy. They say, it's not my money. I'm not going to get a raise if I work harder or if I make smarter decisions or if I take actions to save the taxpayers' money. It's not going to affect me, so why do I care? It's not my money. That's the kind of attitude that you get from civil service workers. Not all of them, but there are a big percentage of civil service workers who have this kind of mentality. I have worked with people in the military. No offense to those people as human beings, but They didn't care if they could save their squadron money. They had no worry about it. Okay, well, I broke a $10,000 piece of equipment. Hopefully nobody notices that changeover. That's the kind of stuff that people do. They have no cares. I've seen people just dragging their weapons on the ground, scratching them up. People don't care. It's not their stuff. If they had to spend the money to actually buy the equipment, if it was their money, there was some kind of penalty for doing that. They were afraid of getting caught. Maybe, but anyway, this happens a lot. A lot of fraud, waste, and abuse in the government. And this is what's going to happen to the internet. Nobody's going to give a crap about it. Your internet's going to be worse. There is no problem. And net neutrality actually does not offer solutions, as FCC Commissioner Ajit Pai just told us. So it really doesn't offer solutions, and the reason for that could be because the internet's not broken. But moreover, he also said that he would like to see more competition. It's not perfect, but there's not as much competition as he would like to see. Well, why is that? Why isn't there enough competition? Why aren't there more ISPs out there? Could it potentially be because there's a lot of regulation? Maybe. Yeah, that's why. It's impossible to start an ISP nowadays. You can't do it. There's so much regulation. You just cannot do it. They have kicked out the ladder of success. If you want to start it, you can't. They are de facto monopolies. Companies like Comcast, they corner the market. The government colludes with them. This is not free market. This is crony capitalism. It's not capitalism. It's crony capitalism. There's a big difference here. When the government starts colluding with corporations to pick the winners and the losers, we all lose in the long run because there's less competition, and the government sinks in with these companies. They basically create the foundation for monopolies. And then we have less choice. We have less freedom. And that may, in turn, turn into less internet freedom. Now, that's strange because any place where the government is involved, we end up having less and less freedom. It gets less and less efficient. Why would we bring the government in to be a solution to a problem that doesn't exist, but they will surely create? I digress. Anyway, at this point, we're going to go ahead and go into the next segment of the show, and we like to call this segment the Mac Attack. And in this segment, we're going to be covering the featured topics. Like I said, we're going to be talking about the Supreme Court's hypocritical decision on the hidden use of law enforcement's use of hidden cameras on private property. So anyway, here we go.
It's time for the Mac Attack!
All right, like I said, this is a segment of the show where we report about outrageous things in the news. So if you have anything on your mind, feel free to give us a call. The number to the show is 360-450-5625. Again, that's 360-450-5625. And, feel free to make your voice heard. We'd be happy to chat with you on the air here. So, anyway, let's talk about this story. This is an older decision. It's not anything brand new. It is something that affects you. It has definite interest in affecting you. But I think it's something that you really need to discuss, okay? The court, they okayed warrantless use of hidden surveillance cameras on private property. So this is an article, this is from 2012, October 30th, written by Declan McCullough, and this is on CNET.com. Anyway, it says, police are allowed in some circumstances to install hidden surveillance cameras on private property without obtaining a search warrant, a federal judge said yesterday. CNET has learned that U.S. District Judge William Gresbach ruled that it was reasonable for Drug Enforcement Administration agents to enter rural property without permission and without a warrant to install multiple covert digital surveillance cameras in hopes of uncovering evidence that 30 to 40 marijuana plants were being grown. Now remember, all this is because of marijuana. So we're not talking about, a heroin dealer or, big cocaine cartel or something like that. This is for 30 or 40 marijuana plants. This is the latest case to highlight how advances in technology are causing the legal system to rethink how Americans' privacy rights are protected by law. In January, the Supreme Court rejected warrantless GPS tracking after previously rejecting warrantless thermal imaging. Now let's actually talk about that for a second. So there were two things that were happening here that he just mentioned. They rejected the warrantless GPS tracking. So basically, they planted a GPS tracker on somebody and they could track wherever they went. And the Supreme Court rightly rejected that as a invasion of privacy. So, and they said if you want to do something like that, get a warrant. I think that's reasonable. So, after that, then they rejected the thermal imaging, and I've talked about this before. So what they did is they took these thermal imagers and they either, I don't know if they did it from an overhead view or from the outside, but basically they scanned a house. And you know how thermal imaging works. You can, in some cases, you may be able to see through walls depending on how sensitive the equipment is, and depending on, especially if they're in front of a window, maybe they just had a little thin sheet over the window or something, something to block it. I can't remember a curtain. There we go. I don't know why that word escaped me all of a sudden, but maybe they just had a thin curtain. And you can't see in, but if you have a thermal imager, you can see through. You can see the heat signatures. So they could see a whole bunch of stuff, where people are in the house, kind of what they're doing in the house. You can also see how many people are in the house. These are all invasions of privacy. And then in addition to that, they were using it to determine heat signatures, and they could find out if people were growing marijuana in their homes, because these grow operations, they take a considerable amount of electricity, and they produce quite a bit of heat. So anyway, the Supreme Court ruled that was wrong. And this is just another one of these cases here where, technology is upgrading, and the court is trying to stay on top of it, but they can't even decide on it until the police do it, get caught, and get sued, and somebody's fighting in court about it. So the Supreme Court, according to this article, I don't know if this has been done yet, but it said it has yet to rule on warrantless cell phone tracking or warrantless use of surveillance cameras placed on private property without permission. Yesterday, Griesbach adopted a recommendation by U.S. Magistrate Judge William Callahan dated October 9. That recommendation said that the DEA's warrantless surveillance did not violate the Fourth Amendment, which prohibits unreasonable searches and requires that warrants describe the places that's being searched. The Supreme Court has upheld the use of technology as a substitute for ordinary police surveillance, Callahan wrote. So, first of all, this is not the Supreme Court. This is a federal judge that has decided this, okay? And he's using the Supreme Court's their declaration that they said that they can use technology as a substitute for ordinary police surveillance. Now, if the surveillance is being conducted on private property where the police officers could not be because they would be trespassing, then this should not work, right? This should be thrown out. Anyway, two defendants in the case, Manuel Mendoza and Marco Magana of Green Bay, Wisconsin, have been charged with federal drug crimes after DEA agent Stephen Curran claimed to have discovered more than 1,000 marijuana plants grown on the property and face possible life imprisonment and fines of up to $10 million. Mendoza, and by the way, I just want to mention, all right, 1,000 marijuana plants. That's a pretty extreme amount of marijuana plants being grown, I will admit. But first of all, you guys know how I feel about marijuana and even all drugs in general here. But if we're talking about marijuana, this is the least that we need to worry about. Marijuana, really? Marijuana. Worry about some other stuff. There's a lot worse drugs out on the street. Marijuana is not what you need to be worrying about, DEA. It's going to be legal. It's just a matter of time. It's going to be legal. In my personal opinion, I believe that every state is going to have marijuana legal. It is just a matter of time. And I think shortly after that, we're going to see, and I don't know if this would be a good thing or bad thing, but I think personally it's good. I think that all drugs should be legalized. I think it's a personal choice. I don't think that the government should be involved with it. They shouldn't be around trying to nanny state and tell us what's best for us and say, oh, drugs are bad, and if you do drugs, they'll ruin your life. And if you do drugs and we catch you, we're going to ruin your life by throwing you in jail for life. So 1,000 marijuana plants grown on this property. These people face life in prison for marijuana. Life. I don't care if they had 1 million plants. Life in prison. And fines up to $10 million? That's just ridiculous. I don't know if you guys feel the same way. I do not think that the punishment here fits the crime at all. We're talking about a plant. A plant. It grows in the ground. If you light it on fire, it just so happens to have some effects. I mean, this is a plant. I digress. Anyway, the article goes on. Mendoza and Maganan asked Callahan to throw out the video evidence on Fourth Amendment grounds, noting that no trespassing signs were posted throughout the heavily wooded 22-acre property owned by Maganan, and that it also had a locked gate. Okay, so what we're talking about here is private property. The DEA came onto private property with a locked gate. So they trespassed in violation of the signs that said no trespassing. And this is not a substitution to ordinary police surveillance. This is a flagrant violation. They have absolutely and unequivocally violated the Fourth Amendment right of these individuals. Now, yeah, they were caught doing something they weren't supposed to be doing. Absolutely. However, if you have evidence from a poisonous tree, the entire evidence is poisoned. It's fruit of a poisonous tree. That's the way they look at it anyway, as far as the court. Now, I don't know what will happen with this. I haven't. I've been trying to find some other articles on here. I haven't been able to find any updates, but this is kind of old. But this is blowing me away that a federal judge, Callahan, based his reasoning on a 1984, and by the way, don't think it eludes me that 1984 is the Supreme Court year that they had this case here. 1984 Supreme Court case called Oliver v. United States, in which a majority of the justices said that open fields could be searched without warrants because they're not covered by the Fourth Amendment. And this is what lawyers call, I believe it's called curtilage, something along those lines. On the other hand, meaning the land immediately surrounding a residence still has greater privacy protection. So apparently the court decided in 1984 that if you have an open field on your property, it can be searched without a warrant for some reason. Maybe because you can see it, if you can see it from a public access. I think that's wrong as well. If it's your property, you have a right to be secure in your property. That is in the Fourth Amendment. Your property. So if you own that, that's your property. It doesn't matter if there's trees growing on it or not. But either way, this case, the 1984 case, doesn't even fall into that. This says open fields. This property from these defendants, owned by Magana, we're talking about a heavily wooded area with a gate, not open, enclosed with a gate, no trespassing signs all over the place. So anyway, the article went on, placing a video camera in a location that allows law enforcement to record activities outside of a home and beyond protected curtilage. I think I'm saying that right, or curtilage, that's probably it, curtilage, does not violate the Fourth Amendment. Justice Department prosecutors James Santella and Williams Lipscomb told Callahan. As digital sensors become cheaper and wireless connections become more powerful, the Justice Department's argument would allow police to install cameras on private property without court oversight, subject only to budgetary limits and political pressure. Now, let me just talk about this for 1 second, okay? You have no evidence. As a member of the DEA, you may have your suspicions, your hunch. You have no evidence. You have no probable cause. You have no reasonable suspicion, which is what you need in order to do these kind of things. In order to get a search warrant, if you brought that kind of stuff to the judge, if you had evidence and the judge was willing to issue a warrant, they would give you the warrant and you could do these kind of things. But what they're doing is, we don't have enough proof to prove that you are doing something wrong, so we're just going to spy on you and hope that we find something. And if we find something, aha, we got you. We got you. You know, who's to say this isn't going to happen all over the place? Are you comfortable with having police officers have hidden cameras everywhere? And at what point does it come into your home? Because you know things like this spread and it gets more and more, it snowballs. It's that slippery slope that we talk about all the time. You know, is one day the police, are they going to have, cameras outside everybody's stinking house in your driveway? Is that when we're safe enough? Are we finally safe when there's a camera in every driveway in America monitored by the police? Are we finally safe? Are we protected enough? They want to get into the privacy of your home. They want to violate your rights of privacy. Even if you're on your own land outside your home, you still have a right to that. That's your property. It's private property. There's a word there in front of that. It's called private. Private. That sounds a lot like privacy. Private property. I don't know why this even has to be argued. This is common sense. No one should even have to be arguing that you have a right to privacy on private property. But yet, they want the discretion to be able to look in, even if they have no proof that you possibly have committed a crime, no reasonable suspicion, but they want the discretion to look anyway. Just like we're told that they want the discretion for everything. The government, that's what they do. They ask for discretion. Give us discretion to look through all your emails. Give us the discretion to be able to intercept every single human communication and store it until the end of time in data mining databases in Utah that are capable of storing a yottabyte of information or more. That's what we know about. Give us this discretion. We're not gonna violate your trust. Trust us. We're good. We're the government. We love you. We're going to look out for you. No, they don't give a crap about you. What they want is the ability to turn it on. They want the ability to flip that switch of tyranny and be able to just do whatever they want. They want discretion because it gives them the ability to do it when they need to do it, when they want to do it. And then when they do it, they can say, oh, we're just going after these drug people, the cartels. Terrorists. We need it. National security. Officer safety. We need it. What do you? Hate children? It's for the kids. For the kids. You must hate children. I'm so sick of this stuff. We are getting attacked on all sides. It just seems like it just keeps coming. Just keeps coming. So here's another situation, that they take these cameras and they recorded this for about 4 days without warrants, without reasonable suspicion, without probable cause. Just a hunch. Somebody decided to stick a camera out in front of somebody's house and monitor all the activities. Even though it was in an area, like I said, on the private property that they weren't allowed to get to. So again, the rationale of this whole thing is that the Callahan's using the Supreme Court upholding the use of technology as a substitute for ordinary police surveillance. Well, the police couldn't have been there. The police would not have been able to access this property and this location legally without trespassing as they did. It's astounding. They monitored the property 4 days continuously, and a magistrate judge did subsequently grant a warrant. But attorneys for Mendoza and Magana noticed that the surveillance took place before the warrant was granted. That one actions could be recorded on their own property, even if the property is not within curtilage, is contrary to society's concept of privacy, wrote Brett Reitz, Magana's attorney, in a legal filing last month. The owner and his guests had reason to believe that their activities on the property were not subject to video surveillance, as it would constitute a violation of privacy. A jury has been scheduled for January 22nd. I got to find out what happened with that. If you guys hear anything about that story, if you have any updates, please send it to me. I would love to hear what happened on this. But another thing that I find particularly interesting is that it's actually a felony to, number one, tamper with, remove this spying device. It's actually a felony. If you find the government had some kind of surveillance device hidden on your property, if you find it and you remove it or destroy it, that's a felony. You can go to jail. It's on your property, but you can go to jail. If you do anything to stop it, to touch it, to tamper it, that's a felony. So, just an FYI. Pretty outrageous story. Now, excuse me. Alrighty, so I want to talk about that, but now, why is this so hypocritical? Why is this such a big deal? You know, the government in particular, they have a lot of these little controversies that they think that it's okay to do to us, but when you flip it around the other way, they suddenly have a problem. Now, the circumstances are different, and you know, if we're talking about transparency and openness of our government, you know, we should have the right to see what our government's doing, right? Right? Yeah. Okay. So if they want to see in our private property, we should have access to everything that happens in public property, right? We should be able to record. We should be able to have access to the recordings. We should have all that, right? Well, wrong. According to an article I found here, and this is really blowing me away, actually, here. This is about a year old. The Supreme Court has never had a video recording up until last year. There's never been video from the inside of the Supreme Court. They have forbidden all electronics. They've never allowed any video whatsoever. And on, let's see here, I believe this is 27 February 2014, in an article on CNN.com by Bill Mears, the Supreme Court secretly recorded on camera. So somebody recorded them while court was in session. And I find this to be a very hypocritical stance. But before I get into the analysis on this, I'm going to play the clip from this CNN report and let you guys hear it yourself. It's about 2 minutes.
For the first time ever, video from inside the Supreme Court while the court was in session. It's impossible for me to say how special this is. You're like, okay, I'm looking at the back of people's heads. It looks like we're in church. No. This video was taken as part of a planned protest by a group supporting campaign finance reform. But we don't know how they got the camera into the court. Because here's the fact. In the modern era, 2014, no electronic device has ever been permitted in the court's public sessions. All spectators, members of the media, are screened. At the end of the video, a protester stands up, interrupts the court, and is escorted out by security. So, like, they did this on purpose, all right? I'm making that point. But here's the thing. There are only 2 known pictures of the court in session, both taken by still cameras smuggled inside the chamber. Joining me now is CNN legal analyst Jeffrey Toobin. I mean, Jeff, I know I'm making a big deal of this. I mean, I remember sitting in that court. Actually, I was a student at the time, and it was an incredible moment. You're not allowed to take anything in to photograph it. There have been a lot of people who say this is completely and utterly inappropriate in a transparent country like the United States of America. The justices have kept the cameras out. What do you think of this?
Well, I am baffled because, I've been in the court many times, and even the news media has to walk through metal detectors. We're not allowed to bring electronics in. Everybody passes through those metal detectors. So something happened here. There was a lapse, and the Supreme Court has said they're investigating, and that's certainly what it looks like in there. I certainly never expected anyone to be able to smuggle a camera in there.
Well, I mean, that's, I guess, pretty frightening to the point you're making, how it could have even have happened, and if that could have gotten in, what else could get in? And that's sort of one serious issue here. But what about the other one? Should cameras be allowed? I mean,
I completely believe that cameras should be allowed in the courtrooms. There are perhaps good arguments against cameras in trials. You have witnesses, you have jurors that might be intimidated. None of those apply at the Supreme Court, and these are the most important issues in our legal system that are being debated there. The justices simply don't want it. I think the main reason is they don't want Jon Stewart to make fun of them. They don't want to have clips appear on The Daily Show. And that is not a good reason as far as I'm concerned. They do release audio at the end of the week when they have arguments. I'd be willing to bet that there will be live audio streamed on the web at some point in the next few years. But I think events like today by these knuckleheads make video even less likely.
All right, so, for me, this is a simple issue. We have a right to record public officials in the performance of official duties. Obviously, the Supreme Court justices are officials who work for the public, and they just so happen to be in a public space, which means that we own it, the people. Yet we aren't allowed to see what happens unless we're actually in there. And to get in there, you have to go through the security, and they make sure that you don't have a camera on you, because we don't want all this freedom to get out. You know, we don't want people to know what all is going on behind these locked doors, because it's too much freedom, right? No, it's hypocrisy. That's what this is. This is straight up hypocrisy. They are okay with recording you in your private property. They have no problem recording you in the privacy of your own home. You know, that if, let's say, the camera's outside your private property pointed towards your house, in through your windows, and don't think they wouldn't do that. They would. They're using thermal imaging to actually view what's going on inside of your home. So don't think it's above them to point a camera in your window. Oh, you know, we can just see it from outside your house. You know, we've got the right to be outside your house and your private property. We're allowed to trespass through your gate, ignore your trespassing signs, walk through your heavily wooded property, install these hidden cameras. Yeah, we're allowed to do that, so why can't we point them at your house and look in your window? We can clearly see it. We're already allowed to be here, right? So we can look in there. It's visible. This is where things are going to go. It just snowballs. It just gets bigger and bigger. And after they're able to look into your windows, how soon until they're able to just put a camera right there in your wall? You know, how about right in your smoke detector? I think I would feel a whole lot safer knowing that the government had a camera in every smoke detector. I would feel so safe. Actually, never mind. I don't think I would feel safe. This is starting to feel a whole lot like Big Brother 1984. You know, the government has telescreens in every single home. They can see and hear everything you're doing. I'm tired of living in a surveillance state. I'm tired of the government having access to things that are deeply personal and violating things that they shouldn't be violating. If you want to search something, get a warrant. It's simple. The process hasn't changed since the founding of our country. It's simple. You get a warrant. You have reasonable suspicion that I'm committing a crime? Okay. Get a warrant. You got probable cause? Go ahead, get a warrant. I don't have any problem with you getting a warrant. But to just search something, to violate someone's right, their private property, the privacy of their property, it belongs to them. It doesn't belong to government. It's not public access. It's not like when you're in public. When you're in public, you have no expectation of privacy. You know, if somebody's out on the street, they can record you and do all they want. They can follow you around. Hey, you know what? If the police want to trail somebody that they have no reasonable suspicion on, they just have a hunch. You know, if they want to trail them, follow them around, see what they do. You know, when they're in public, I don't have any problem with that. If they want to do that. Now, if they start putting a GPS tracker on their car, that's different. That's a lot different, because now you're literally following every single place this guy goes. You know, and it's a lot different than having somebody follow them. I think that is one of those circumstances, and I think rightly so, the court struck that down. But that's a lot different, and I think that it's a little bit ridiculous to say that, you know, technology can be replaced for ordinary police work. You know, there's a big difference between one guy following somebody around and a police department just sticking GPS locators on anybody they feel like it, and they can track them whenever they want without probable cause, without reasonable suspicion. That is a gross violation of privacy. Anyway, we're going to come back. We got a lot of other topics to cover. I have a whole slew of articles that I'm waiting to get through here. But anyway, we're going to cut to a quick commercial break, and when we get back, we're going to get more into this. I want to talk a little bit about courtroom tyranny, and we have like a judicial vibe going on today's show. So anyway, we'll be right back, guys. Don't go anywhere.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mac Worley III.
And we're back. All right, so when we last left, we were talking about the hypocritical decision of the Supreme Court. They don't allow cameras in their courtroom. We can't see what they're doing, but they want to have access to everything that we're doing. They want to be able to set up hidden cameras outside of our homes, on our private property. Let the DEA just spy on us without a warrant. And that's reasonable according to a federal judge. So that's reasonable, but it is unreasonable for us to be able to see what goes on via video recordings of the Supreme Court. And mind you, this is a public place. All right, it's a public place, which means it was built and it's maintained with public funds. That means that I help pay for it, you help pay for it, everybody helps pay for this place, which means that we all have a stake in it, we all own it, and yet we can't see what's going on. There is no accountability. And again, that's really no surprise, but we're talking about the Supreme Court, the ones who gave themselves the power of judicial review. I know you guys know how I feel about it. I've probably pounded this dead horse far too many times, but the ability to determine what is constitutional and what is not. That power was never given to the Supreme Court. They took it for themselves. So of course they'll be hypocrites about this because this is what they do. This branch of government has its head on backwards. It does not make any sense. Most of the time, I'm just shocked at the things that the Supreme Court allows by. I'm usually shocked, and I really don't ever give any much real importance to what they say or think. I know it may be the law of the land, but I really don't care about their opinions because this is the same people that gave themselves this authority. If suddenly I just decided that I'm going to be emperor of the world, that doesn't matter. But these people, they just gave themselves an authority, and everybody goes along with it. It's not in the Constitution. Nowhere does it say that the Supreme Court will be the ultimate arbiter on all things constitutional. There is no recourse. There is no way around it. Do you think that our founders would have been okay with something like this that has absolutely no check or balance? There is no way around it. Right now, if the Supreme Court rules on something, that's it. It's final. Supreme Court ruled. That's it. But right now, we have no way. We have no way to change it. And I'm a big advocate, and I've said before that I think that we should have a way around it. First of all, I think there should be term limits on the Supreme Court. I think also that there should be a way around their decisions. If we can get, let's say, 2/3 majority of all the states together, I think that we should be allowed, with a supermajority of states, to overturn a Supreme Court ruling. That means that if the Supreme Court ruled on something and you couldn't find 14 states to oppose it, whatever the ruling was, all right, to overturn it. If it was such a bad ruling that only 13 states opposed overturning it, then you could overturn it. But imagine, how controversial would a subject have to be for us to not be able to get 14 states to overturn it? I don't think it would be difficult to get 14 out of 50 states to overturn something, or to block something, basically. You know, that's the way I look at it. I think that we should have something like that in case the Supreme Court, they come out with stuff that we completely disagree on, which they do a lot, and the majority of the states don't agree with it. And this is one of those things. You know, right now it's called federalism. That's what they like to call it, federalism, where, you know, there is a sharing of power between the states and the federal government. You know, they share power, they overlap, and then they have their own powers, and you know, those powers, like I said, overlap. Well, what we've seen is an expansion of the federal powers. The federal Leviathan just keeps growing and growing and growing, and their list of powers keeps being added to. We just keep seeing more and more, and the states, their powers just keep diminishing. They get less and less and less and less pieces of that pie. There's only so much power to go around. Imagine, you know, power of government as a big pie, and you know, there are, you know, enough pieces for everybody. You know, everybody's got some, but then you split it in half. You give half to the states, half to the federal government. That's the concept of federalism. That's what it originally was. Is, you know, some of these pieces belong to both. Some pieces belong to just the states, and some pieces belong to just the federal government. Well, what's happened is the federal government, through the Supreme Court, because now they're the ultimate arbiter, they can decide what's constitutional and what's not. So if the federal government decides that the states are out of line via the Supreme Court, suddenly they lose their sovereignty. The states have no rights, and they have no recourse against a decision. I know I'm off on a little tangent here, but I think this is important to discuss because state rights are important. You know, I don't think that our founders would agree with the way that the federal government is run right now, the lack of checks and balances that we have now. I think many of them would be very disturbed at what's happening. Anyway, I want to bring some attention to this because I personally haven't talked about it yet, and I think it's important to note. You know, we were talking about courtrooms, and I want to talk about courtroom tyranny. And one person that you may be familiar with, his name is Gavin Syme. He's kind of in a situation right now where he needs your guys' help. I don't know what you think about Gavin. I respect what he's doing in a lot of different cases. You know, him and I, we don't see perfectly eye to eye on every situation. You know, I'm a libertarian. He's more of a conservative. And I do think that we align on quite a few issues, though. And I'm a big fan of partnering up with people that, you know, even if we don't agree on everything, if we can agree on just liberty and less government and more choice for individuals, I think that we can, you know, help each other out and help push things forward, turn that dial of liberty forward. So anyway, he's been in a situation here. I don't know the circumstances of leading up to the arrest, but he was arrested in a courtroom defying tyranny of the judge, and it's an interesting video. You guys can actually check out the video in its entirety. It's about 14 minutes and 14 seconds long, and you can do so at his GoFundMe page because right now they're fighting this. They're trying to raise $10,000, and of that they've got $123. And Gavin Syme is the one here, and it's GoFundMe.com/Symes, SEIMS. Okay, so you can check out the video. I'll play the first little bit of it here, and you guys can get an idea. It's kind of like a teaser that he got built into the video here, and you can get an idea of what he's fighting against. For too long, Americans have tolerated tyranny in the courtroom.
We do have a representative from the Wenatchee Daily World here today. There will not be any other recording or pictures allowed other than by the news media.
Okay, so that was the judge speaking. And so what they did is they brought somebody from the mainstream media, a photographer, I don't know who he worked for, what he worked for, and they would not allow any recording to be done inside of the courtroom. And they were notified, and according to the Washington state law, they're allowed to record. So anyway, it goes on.
76 and a 60. That's the only reason I stopped you.
Thank you. You should have told me that.
No, I don't have to.
So They're arriving.
Yeah, might as well take us all. Take us all. Come on.
Whoa. They're taking him out.
You will sit down or leave.
That's
Will you
the
return
judge.
my brother to the courtroom?
Sir, this is my courtroom.
No, this is our courtroom. How dare you say that this is your courtroom? This is the people's courtroom.
I'm telling you to be quiet.
I'm telling you, you are in contempt of this court. Do we need to arrest you, ma'am? Lawyers, are you going to tase me, bro? Hey, him! Stand up! Stand up! He's not resisting.
You gotta back up. You gotta back up. Back up. You gotta move over.
What are you pushing it for? You want to start pushing?
Okay, so anyway, the judge says this is her court, and this is a common thing, a common thread that you'll see in courtrooms. I absolutely, and this is no offense to the individual judges. All right, I don't have respect for positions. I have no respect for them because they are public servants. All right, people say things like, you should respect the office of the presidency. Even if you don't respect the president, you should respect the office. You should respect the judges because they're in a position of authority, and you should just respect them. And you should respect police officers simply because they're police officers. I'm going to disagree. Maybe this is kind of a radical way of thinking about things, but I typically look at people based on the content of their character. That's how I make my judgments. I don't care if you have a shiny little badge on your shoulder. That stuff, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything about who you are, your values, the content of your character. Respect is earned, not just given. It's not a free commodity out there. So because you are a public servant, that has absolutely no bearing on what I think about you. That doesn't mean I'll think less of you. That doesn't mean I'll think better of you. It means that I will look at you and judge you based on the content of your character. But we have these public servants, these people who serve us, the people. They get power trips. Suddenly, they think that they control everything. We got police officers, violating people's rights, taking over situations that they have absolutely no business trying to call shots, ordering people around, giving unlawful orders. Again, in some of these situations, they may have authority. If there's reasonable suspicion, probable cause, if you have a warrant, things along those lines. Okay, great. You can get involved in the situation. Great. All right. You have the right to. But just because you're a public servant doesn't mean that you have any authority if circumstances aren't met. Okay? Now, in a courtroom, I'm not saying you go out and you antagonize a judge. That's probably not a great idea. It's probably not going to work out very well for you if you are the defendant in the courtroom. Even if you're trying to sue somebody and you're on the opposite side, it's probably not going to work out for you getting the judge upset. All right? Getting the judge angry, not liking you, it's not going to work out. But to the same point, they say, this is my courtroom. This is my courtroom. You may be, directing and orchestrating and in charge, so to speak, but it does not belong to you. It belongs to the people. The courtroom belongs to the people. And it blows me away that there is this concept that we can't see and record and keep everything open and honest because the camera doesn't lie. Especially with live stream, that's what Gavin was trying to do. He got in trouble because he was trying to live stream the court proceedings, and they stopped everything. They had no problem whatsoever with the mainstream media over on the side and in the back, just taking pictures all they wanted. They can record everything that they wanted, but when the people want to actually record what's going on in the people's courtroom, suddenly all hell breaks loose. They start sending their armed thugs out to take away your cameras and arrest anybody who refuses to comply. This is public property. It's public property. Number one, we pay for it. It is maintained. It was built with our money. It belongs to us, you and me. We have every right, number one, to be in the area. We have every right to record what happens in public property. And moreover, we have every right to record public officials performing their duties That's absolutely ridiculous to think that this much crap started over somebody trying to record and live stream when somebody is allowed to right next to it. Why is the mainstream media considered the press? Why are they the only ones that are the press? I find it disturbing. The concept that citizen journalists or independent journalists have less to contribute than the mainstream media. In fact, I think the mainstream media has far less to contribute in a lot of ways. You're getting a corporate side of the news. You like your side with your news with the side of advertisements? Go ahead. You like your news slanted in a direction that this corporation wants it to be slanted in? That's fine. If you enjoy your news that way, that's fine. It's the free market of ideas. If you're listening to this, again, I mentioned it last week. If you're listening to this, there is something I have done to bring you here. And in the market of ideas, you have latched onto this one for whatever reason. And I hope I can cultivate that and make you come back week after week. I hope so. I don't know what your reason is. But out of the free market of ideas, you have picked this idea. It's astounding that they think that let's backtrack here. I just want to talk about for 1 second. Let's look at the word press. What does that mean? What do you think it meant? Press. Do you think of like NBC, ABC News, CNN, MSNBC Communist? Is that what you think of when you think of press? You know what I think of when I hear the word press? I relate it to what founders would have meant with the word press. And what do you think that would have been? When you said press to, I don't know if you're talking with Thomas Jefferson and he's talking about press, what do you think that imagery would come to his mind? I'm guessing a printing press, the actual printing press that they, print out leaflets, newspapers, books, things like that. They didn't have the corporate media like they have now. Okay, there was no such thing as CNN. There was no such thing as ABC and NBC. So to think that only those are press, it's a little bit close-minded, a little short-sighted. You can't see back in the past to think that they would only think that those people, those corporations would have the right to the freedom of press is a little bit ridiculous. I mean, it's extremely ridiculous because they wouldn't have even had those to begin with. And to think that only those big corporations would have been capable of actually using a press machine, a printing press, is ridiculous too. Of course, a small group of people or even an individual could have produced a book and could utilize that freedom of the press. Just look at Thomas Paine. He wrote the book Common Sense. Do you think that he was enjoying the freedom of the press? Yes, of course he was. You have the it's not only the freedom of the press, but it's also your right to speak, your freedom of speech. To limit people in courtrooms is tyranny. Number one, we own the place. It's ours. It doesn't belong to the judge. It doesn't belong to the bailiff. It doesn't belong to anybody except for the public. And the public servants have gone off the rails. We need to take our courtrooms back. They belong to us, not them. And on to that again. We have every right to record public officials and performances of their duties. Of course, we as Americans, we all enjoy the freedom of the press, not just these major corporations. Anybody can be a member of the press. All you have to do is speak about what's going on, to print what is going on, to podcast what's going on. Whatever you're doing, that's a right that we all hold. It's not just with these corporations, and nowhere in the Constitution does it say anything about, the Communist News Network, MSNBC crazy. None of those things. It says we have the right to the freedom of press. It's pretty simple, very simple. But anyway, you can help, stand with Gavin. you can go to his GoFundMe, gofundme.com/Seims, SEIMS. You can donate to his cause if you're interested. And in addition to that, I want to talk a little bit about here. I had a guest a few weeks back, and they were talking about the case of Charles Dyer. And here's another situation, you guys, if you're interested, you can get involved in. If any of you listened to this situation, you'll know what I'm talking about. But Charles Dyer has been arrested, and there's a whole lot of information that you can get from his Facebook group. Let me find the address here. It's facebook.com/groups/Charles Dyer, Dyer, and you can get a lot of information about the case, what's happened there. It's a public group, Patriots for Justice in the case of Charles Dyer. Lots of information on that on this group, and also he has a let's see here. He's got a mailing address that you can send to for the defense fund. It's you can mail it to Jan Dyer, Jan Dyer, Dyer. 5103 Hope Road, Marlow, Marlow, Oklahoma 73055. You can send any kind of defense fund donations to that link as well. And I won't go into that again as far as everything that happened. Feel free to do your research if you're interested in getting involved with that. But he is a member of the Patriot community, and he's going through his own legal battles as well. So anyway, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and cut to a quick commercial break. I'm going to grab a drink of water real fast and clear my throat. And then when we come back, we got some more stuff to cover. Like I said, we're sitting on a lot of news here. I want to talk about two stories in particular here that are coming up. First one is a lawsuit that 6 California cops, they're being punished for speaking out about defying ticket and arrest quotas. So we're going to talk about that, and in addition to that, we're going to talk about ammo bans. The government's trying to ban that green tip ammo for AR-15s, 5.56, and we're going to talk some about that as well. So anyway, all that's coming up when we come back.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mac Worley III.
Hey, MacPack, we're back. So we got a lot of topics that we need to get to here, and there's a lot of stuff on the wire here that's particularly disturbing. As usual, there's always something going on, but we have a story here on benswan.com about a lawsuit being filed by 6 California cops who are being punished for speaking out about defying tickets and arrest quotas. I don't know what you guys think about this as far as having police departments in general just having arrest quotas and ticket quotas, how much that they have to do. But there is a video on this article here that I'll go ahead and play for you. I'm sure it'll sum it up here. And this is an article, like I said, benswan.com, and it's written by Barry Dungan. This is March 6, 2015.
Micah, their attorney tells me there was a culture here that made officers feel obligated to sit and wait in neighborhoods where citizens were more likely to break the law.
It's not fun having to go out and be forced to cite people when you feel a warning would suffice.
6 Whittier police officers are suing the city. They say police department supervisors unlawfully pressured them to write tickets and make arrests.
These officers were not given a certain number of tickets because that is a pretty obvious quota. Instead, they were compared to each other. So they were compared to the team average, which is illegal.
The complaint filed Tuesday states the officers faced retaliation if they didn't meet quotas.
They would be transferred and their jobs were threatened.
The plaintiffs say this has been going on since 2008. We obtained a memo from 2012. A department captain accuses one of the officers of deficient productivity. It reads, quote, "You issued 7 traffic citations versus a team average of 17. You had 4 misdemeanor arrests versus a team average of 9. And you had 1 felony arrest versus a team average of 3. Another evaluation from 2009 listed an officer's goal, quote, "Work to increase patrol activity and citation productivity to a level that is within the average of your peers."
This is their livelihood. This is how they put food on the table. This is how they pay their mortgage.
The officer's attorney says California law prohibits state and local agencies from requiring their officers to meet quotas.
It destroys the faith of the public in their law enforcement officers.
And we weren't able to reach the chief of police or city manager for comment before air. We're live in Whittier. Kimberly Chang, KTLA 5 News.
All right, so
Micah, their attorney tells me there was a culture here that
I don't know what it was. Okay, there we go. Sorry, I'm technically deficient. All right, so anyway, in the video they're talking about how they didn't have specific quotas. Like, they didn't say you have to issue out 15 tickets in this amount of time. They just compared it against the average of everyone else, and those who were at the bottom end, those got highly scrutinized and pressured and possibly threatened to lose their job, things along those lines. I have a really difficult time feeling sympathy for people who have it tough in government. But this one in particular, I do actually feel sorry for those police officers. Obviously they could choose to go work somewhere else. I mean, no one's forcing them to be a police officer. It is their livelihood. That's how they're making their money. But they have every right to vote with their feet, and they can go somewhere else. Just like anyone else. If you don't like your job, you can go find another one. But I want police officers on the force who are going to actually fight this kind of stuff. First of all, it is tyranny. The whole idea of us versus them. We got to get a certain amount of quota. Certain amount of tickets, certain amount of arrests, certain amount of misdemeanor arrests and felony arrests. We got to get them. Because we know crime's happening. We just got to find it. We got to find it. That's kind of the idea of what this whole thing is. I think it gives a mentality of an us versus them, first of all. That they're not, and I've said this before, police officers, they're not your friends. That they are not out to, keep the peace. Especially in city, now you talk sheriff's office, it may be a little better. And I'm not speaking necessarily for, for every individual police officer out there. I have nothing against police officers, especially those who, will honor and uphold the oath that they kept to the Constitution. No problem with that. But they are a revenue arm for the government. That's what they are. They are a revenue arm. They create revenue. That's what they do. If they didn't have the aspects of revenue, we would not see the kind of police presence that we see out. I mean, we just wouldn't. If their job was to protect and serve and keep the peace, And they weren't concerned about how to make, how to actually manufacture money from the people, from the populace. Again, these are public servants trying to figure out how to squeeze more money out of your wallet so it can go to the state. They call it pennies from heaven. That's what they're doing. And it is pennies from above them, I guess, if they're shaking you upside down and whatever falls out is theirs. Yeah, those are pennies from heaven, I guess. But, this kind of thing, it's not surprising. It doesn't surprise me at all that there are quotas, even though they're not supposed to be. I'm happy that these law enforcement officers are actually opposing this. I think that it's a good thing, and I wish them the best of luck. I really don't know if they'll have any success, and this kind of stuff is systemic, and it's because of this whole idea that they're out to get you. That they don't kind of look at it anymore as like they're public servants. They look at it as a revenue arm, really. They're trying to rack up arrests. They're trying to rack up tickets, make themselves look good, all those things. So, and that's not, we don't care about the police. We don't have police because we want them to make money for the state. That's not a reason we have police. And if it is, nobody would want them. If you try to justify having a police department because they earn revenue for the state, the citizens are not going to go with that. So what are we told? We're told, it's for national security. It's for our safety, public safety, and without them, we would be tearing ourselves apart. It could be true, possible, and it's for the children, because everything's for the children, and you're just a jerk if you don't go for it. But if you used revenue as the only reason why we have police, nobody would go for it, because it's outrageous to think that our government, we have taxes, but then on top of that we also have this enforcement arm that tries to fleece more money from you so we can fund other programs and fund all sorts of different things within the department, give us new things. I mean, it's all sorts of crap. But if that was the reason, nobody would go for it. Why does anybody go for it at all? I don't understand. Yeah, and by the way, I just want to point out an interesting article that just so happens to be on the freethoughtproject.com, and it's written by Matt Agorist? I don't know, something like that. It's Texas town experiences 61% drop in crime after firing their police department. I'm going to say that again. The Texas town experienced a 61% drop in crime after firing their police department. Not just one guy, the entire department. This is in Sharpstown, Texas. It's located just southwest of Houston, and the way that they maintain their security in this community has gotten attention nationally. In 2012, they fired their cops, all of them. The Sharpstown Civic Association then hired Seal Security Solutions, a private firm, to patrol their streets. The statist fearmongers will have you believe that privatizing anything would result in mass chaos and a Mad Max scenario of warlords and rampant crime. But they're wrong. Since we've been here, an independent crime study that they have done indicates that we've reduced the crime by 61% in just 20 months. Government police, despite not acting on it, are still part of the government. This means that any progressive change for the better takes 10 times longer than it would in the private sector if it happens at all. Government police are not driven by efficiency and threats from liability, as neither one of these things are needed when you have a tax farm to rob when things get tight. That is what police are. They can just take from you at any point. You already have taxes, and when they need more money, they just fleece you more and increase their enforcement of these arbitrary laws in many cases, especially laws without victims. And the article goes on, government police, despite not acting like it, are still part of the government. This means that, I already actually read this part, my bad. Contrary to the government apparatus, private police must be efficient as well as safe, for one simple mistake or claim could end their entire operation. If an inefficiency is spotted within their system, changes must be implemented swiftly to avoid the loss of revenue. We're talking about money. The reason for success rate of SEAL is that they can see a problem and quickly adapt versus trying to spin the rusty cogs of a bureaucratic process. And that is exactly what SEAL did in Sharpstown. According to Guns.com, Alexander cites the continuous patrol of SEALs officers and their assigned neighborhoods as opposed to the strategy of intermittent presence that constable embraced. On the constable patrol contact, it's either a 70-30 or an 80-20, meaning that they patrol your community 70% of the time, while 30% of the time they use for running calls out of the area or writing reports. He continues that the second thing that drastically reduces crime is that we directed patrols, meaning that we don't just put an officer out there and say, "Here, go patrol." We look at recent crime stats, and this is we've talked about this. We actually had John. I can't remember his name. I think it was John Grisham. He was running for sheriff out here in Clark County. I think that was his name. And he was talking about basically pre-crime statistics. What they'll do is they look at the crime statistics and they find out off of those stats where the hot spots are in the area for a certain month. So, they take a couple years worth of stats on this place and they say, okay, on March 8th at 6:40 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we've had a crime happen every single year at this location. That exact time, all this stuff, and they can tell when crimes are more likely to happen. It's a bit of pre-crime analysis. It's not ladies sitting in bathtubs, predicting the future. It's computer algorithms. They're taking stats and they can find out, okay, you should put a guy here and it'll deter crime because, 9 times out of 10 on this time of year or whatever like that, in this place, crime happens. It's just statistics. You can't argue. What are you going to argue with science? What are you? Next thing you're going to tell me that the earth is round or something. Anyway, another aspect, and possibly the most important, is that sets private police apart from agents of the state is that they have a negative incentive to initiate force. Force and violence are vastly more expensive than today's police lead us to believe. Causing injury or death or wrongfully depriving someone of their rights is very expensive if these costs are realized for those who cause them. The state does not care, however. They can and will defer their liability to the tax farm. That's me and you, the people that they can just fleece. They just increase their enforcement arm, crank up the money, and the money pours out of our pockets as we hang upside down. And that was me, by the way. That wasn't the article. The act of deferment of liability is a function solely reversed for the state, and it creates an incentive to act in an unethical manner. In the case of SEAL Security, each of their officers, as well as their entire operation, can be held liable, both criminally and financially. This is something about which the state knows nothing. As Guns.com points out, over 70 communities in Harris County and most of the major management districts have contracted with SEAL. They're less expensive, better at crime prevention. They do not target citizens for revenue. And best of all, each officer is personally accountable, legally accountable for his or her actions. It's time America start seriously considering this as an option. Law enforcement is a product that we are forced to buy. We have no choice. When any product is subject to the forces of consumer demand, when any product is not subject to the forces of consumer demand, there's no way of changing it. It's time we applied fundamental lessons of competition to our supposed protectors. Okay, so that was an article on the freethoughtproject.com. I think this is very interesting, and I kind of want to relate it to what we were talking about before, but one thing that I want to just say, I'm a fan of this. I like this in a small town with a small company, one company, one town. I like that. This is good. It's progress. It's something different. Hey, let's try it out. Let's see what works. We know what the big government solution is, and that's the police to be the monopoly on force, the government to be a monopoly on force. What is different? What is different about this? Will this continue to go without a hitch? Now, where I have an issue with, okay, I do have some problem with this. I'm not saying that I want every single police department to be privatized. Oh no. Especially when you start asking the question, well, who owns these companies? And would we even be able to know who actually owns the companies? If we, for example, we have many different security companies, private security companies, which are being run by one big umbrella company that owns them all, or maybe several companies that are all owned even by another umbrella company. This is what a lot of companies do. They give you the illusion of choice. You want to buy this kind of food or this kind of food. It doesn't matter. They're owned by the same people. They're all owned by Monsanto or something along those lines. It's the illusion of choice. You're not really choosing. Where I have a big issue is when we start consolidating essentially what would be a private army in U.S. territory, on U.S. soil. So we have maybe one company that owns a vast majority, or even a big portion of America's security contracts. I don't like the idea of giving a company that kind of power. I just don't like it. I think it's a bad idea, and it starts to get to where you can kind of get like kind of scary stuff about it. Imagine if Google started policing your neighborhood. How comfortable would you feel? Google's involved in everything. It's not that far-fetched to believe that Google would actually one day get involved in policing. If they can figure out a way to make money off of it, I'm sure they would consider it. But this is one of those things that I have my issues with this. If we could figure out a way to make sure that not just a small group of companies were the ones doing this, and again, I would like to see some more research conducted on this over a longer period of time, and more than just one study giving this analysis here. Again, it's just one study saying 61% drop in crime after finding their police department. But I do believe that privatization has its benefits. It also has things that we need to be worried about. But again, we were talking about before, the need for police. We're told that we absolutely have to have police because we would rip ourselves apart. We're apparently all wild animals, and without the police, that fear of violence being initiated upon us by the state, without that fear, we would just tear ourselves apart. It'd be crazy. First of all, I believe that a lot of people have good in their hearts. I believe that a lot of people have bad in their hearts. But I believe that people don't like to be terrorized. So, if there were no police and there were no government, the whole idea that the government is protecting us and that they're the ones holding our societies together, I'm not an anarchist by any means, but I want you guys to think about it. If the government just disappeared off the planet, it was gone. No more government, all right? Do you think that we would all be killing each other? Yeah, there would be some turmoil, all right? There would be a whole crap load of violence probably initially. But after a period of time, people would come together and communities would stabilize. And communities would look out for one another and protect one another. You would have agreements made, and people would do what people do. We make agreements. Yes, there would probably be crime, and yes, maybe a lot of crime would be gotten away with. A lot of people wouldn't be tracked down and investigated and things like that. But people would look out for each other. Neighborhoods would come together. You'd have community watches. I mean, that's kind of what would happen. I mean, when you think about it, if crap hit the fan right now and there was no government, there would be a lot of crazy stuff happening. But eventually, you would see communities start to rise up and protect each other. I believe that would happen all over the country, and I don't believe that the government is the glue holding us together. I think that people are the glue. You and me, people who respect law, respect the sovereignty of others, the rights of others. Those people are the people that hold the glue together. I know that if I saw my neighbors being hurt, I would step in because that's just who I am. I don't have it in me to watch somebody get hurt and not do anything about it. That would literally hurt me. So I know that many people out there are the same, and I think those people will find each other and they'll come together. And I don't think that the police are as necessary as they make themselves out to be. I'm sure the government's going to tell us that they're absolutely essential because they're the government. They're looking out after their own interests. And again, law enforcement is a product that we're forced to buy. We don't have any choice in the matter. It's taxed. And yet they act like we're not their bosses. They're public servants serving us. Really, all they're doing is creating revenue in a lot of cases. And again, I hope that you guys understand, I'm not disparaging police, especially the individual officers. I don't like the way that our police officers are being manipulated by departments to basically act as revenue arms. But the individual officers, I think it's absolutely critical that we have oath-keeping, constitutional, loving peace officers in our police departments, because somebody has to say no to this. Somebody has to say no. And if all we have is the jackboot thugs that are willing to kick your teeth in just because you showed a little bit of dissent or attitude, even though they don't have any probable cause or reasonable suspicion, if that's all we have on the departments, we're going to be screwed. We are going to be screwed. We need people, liberty-loving patriots, to infiltrate the departments. We need good cops out there. We need more of them. I don't know what the ratio of good cop, bad cop is, but I know I see a lot of bad cops all the time. I'm sure I don't see all the good cops. That's one of those things that you just don't see on the news. It's unfortunate, but we need more good cops out there. And kudos to those good cops out there. You have my respect, not because of what you're wearing, the uniform, the position you hold, because of the content of your character. If you are a respectful person and you treat the people that you're serving with respect, you have my respect. And according to Mark off of Twitter here, he said, I tried to respect the office of the president, the office, but when the president thought it was funny to call people like me teabaggers, no more. # no respect. So, by the way, a good comment, Mark. And that's how I feel. I don't respect the offices. The offices mean nothing. The offices are actually subservient to us. So would you feel like you had some kind of you owed some kind of respect to somebody who was in a capacity of serving you, in a situation of servitude towards you? Not that I'm not to disparage maids or anything. And by the way, if you're a maid out there, good on you. You're working hard, but it's one of the it's kind of like a thankless job. To be in a service industry is a thankless job. I've been there before. We've all been there. You don't expect people to call you sir and ma'am and stand up when you walk into a room, and that's what judges do, by the way. They expect you to stand up when they come into a room. Can you imagine doing that when your like waitress came into your room? Oh, it's a waitress. Everybody, hold on, we got to stand up. Okay. No. Oh, yeah, you can show individual respect if the person has an attitude worth respecting. If they come, for example, if your waitress says, "Hey, how you doing? I hope you're having a great day. Here's the menu. Here's our specials," and tell you about it. You may have treat that individual with respect because they're nice and they're polite and they're doing their job and they seem great. But if they come in and they throw a menu at you, and when your food comes, they just toss it across the table and say, leave a tip, you jerk. If they do that, I would imagine that you're not going to have a lot of respect for that person. But they're a servant. They're serving you. They're a servant to you in this capacity. There's no difference here. So if the judge comes out, all rise, and you decide not to rise, and the judge gets an attitude with you, okay, you know what? I don't owe you anything, Judge. I'm just saying. So that's just my personal opinion. I'm sure there's more people out there that feel the same way, but anyway, I digress. We're going to go ahead and move on to another story that I want to cover. We got about 7 minutes left in the show, 8 minutes or so, something like that. And I want to cover the story before we run out of time here. I'm sure a lot of you have been hearing about these ammo bans that are being discussed. And these I find interesting because it's about green tip ammunition. Okay, many of you may be familiar if you served in the military like I did. The AR-15 or the M4 carbine, it actually has ammunition. It'll work in either one, AR-15 or M4 platforms. It's called 5.56, and it has green tips. And these green tips, they're being being banned, and it's kind of astounding because one of the reason here is that they're saying that this is like an armor-piercing round. Here, let's see if I'm reading the article here. When you take a look at the 2005 ATF regulation, you'll see a exemption for the AR-15 green tip ammunition, which means that it is exempt from from the definition of armor piercing. Therefore, it is legal on a federal level. All right. They're actually trying to come after this for being armor piercing, but let's be clear about some things here. This is not armor piercing. It's actually not. And I'm not an expert on ammunition. I did work in the armory of one of the largest armories in the Air Force. But I did that for about 4 years, and I was the assistant non-commissioned officer in charge of that armory. So, I do have some experience when it comes to green tip ammunition. We actually went for a long time, and we actually replaced all of our green tip ammunition with, guess what? Armor piercing ammunition. And that's because green tip isn't armor piercing. It's not. And from what I have been told from CADM, they are the people who, combat arms trainers, they train people to shoot. This is their job. Their job is guns. They shoot guns. They know everything about guns. That's their job, okay? I'm not CADM. I'm just an armorer, all right? So what I've been told from them is that these are frangible rounds. They're frangible. And the word frangible, what it essentially means is that it breaks apart when it hits a target into several different pieces. So it's not full metal jacket. It's not one solid piece of metal. It's frangible. So when it hits, it breaks apart. That means it's actually less likely to penetrate armor. It's less armor piercing because it breaks apart, similar to how a hollow point round would do. If it hit body armor, it's going to expand like an eggshell, like half eggshell, and it's going to be caught on the armor. You're more inclined to have some kind of piercing from the armor, the body armor, if you're using a full metal jacket round. But they're going after the M855 green tip round of AR-15 ammunition, and under the guise of law enforcement safety. And oh my God, I am so tired of this excuse. I cannot take this anymore. It is so frustrating. Officer safety? Officer safety. Well, let's just point out the fact that not one, according to the to freedomoutpost.com experts, not a single police officer has been shot by an AR-15. Not a single. Let me read the article here. As the Obama Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Explosives, otherwise known as the BATFI, continues to position itself as a constitutional authority to ban ammunition, claiming that .556 and .223 caliber M855 ball ammunition should be classified as armor-piercing and cop-killer bullets. The executive vice president of the Second Amendment Foundation says that there isn't one police officer who has ever been shot by this ammunition. The Second Amendment Foundation's Adam Gottlieb said, "We have not been able to find a single instance where a police officer has been shot from this type of handgun, from this type of handgun. This isn't a handgun, this is a shot, this is a rifle. Well, I don't know what they're talking about. Handgun using a bullet that pierces his soft body armor. And if the administration had any examples, they would be pushing it in everybody's face to further their executive action. We've scoured everywhere, gone into every source possible to try to find an instance of this, and have not been able to find one." So this is kind of interesting because they give you this national security, officer safety. It's all the same crap, all right? I'm so tired of these. As I said, the police, and this is not me saying it, this is a constitutional declaration from the Supreme Court. They said that the police have absolutely no constitutional authority to protect you. So that means that they can see you being harmed and decide to wait until the situation, quote, resolves itself, and then they'll investigate afterwards. So they don't have to come help you if you're screaming and dying. They could just sit there and wait until they have backup, or wait until the situation's done and they can come investigate the crime after the fact. But yet, they still use officer safety as a reason, and they're doing it to ban your ammo when you clearly have a case here where no cops have ever been killed with this ammunition, and it's not armor piercing as they're trying to say it is. It is not armor piercing. This is less armor piercing than full metal jackets are. This is outrageous. I am fed up with this crap, and I think you guys need to know about this. You guys need to stand up. please, write your congressman, your representatives, do something. Tell them that this is outrageous. And anyway, I'm starting to notice here, we're running out of time. We're going to go into overdrive just a smidge, just a tiny little bit. I want to cover a video from a friend of mine laughing at liberals. I want to talk about a video from his encounter at a local Capitol building with the police there, and I realize that we're running low on time here, and we're going to be off the air on Haywire Gulch in about a minute here. So, for those of you on HaywireGulch.com, thank you for joining us. I sure do appreciate you guys tuning in, and don't forget to stay tuned for Patriot News. It's coming up next. And anyway, for the rest of you out there, we're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we get back, we're going to cover this video from Laughing at Liberals. And I think you guys are going to be just astounded at how he was treated. So anyway, we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mac Worley III.
This is On The Move, and I am Mac Worley III. If you're listening, you are listening to the Overdrive Hour. We probably aren't going to take up very much more time, but you're listening either on Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow or our website, OnTheMoveShow.com, and I sure do appreciate you all sticking with us here for the Overdrive. I want to cover a particularly disturbing video that I saw, and this is from somebody that I'm familiar with. He's a journalist out here. He goes by Laughing at Liberals. His YouTube channel is Laughing at Liberals. You can check that out. It's youtube.com/Laughing at Liberals. And anyway, he is in a I'm having a brain fart right now. Okay, the Capitol building, the Oregon Capitol building. There we go. And anyway, the police were notified via a panic button that he was in there and recording people in a public space, which he has every right to do. He's every right to be there. And suddenly police swarm him and start harassing him. So I'm going to play the video and let you guys hear what happened to him, and I'll comment throughout it, and we'll see what you guys have to say. And by the way, if you have anything that you would like to add, anything that you would like to comment on, anything we covered at all today, the number to the show is 360-450-5625. Again, that's 360-450-5625, and we'll put you on. We got plenty of time. If you want to chat, we got a whole hour here, but if nobody calls, this will be a real quick overdrive. So anyway, here's a video.
Do you have any evidence that I've committed a crime or anything, or do you just go around asking?
I don't need it to ask for.
March 2nd, 2015.
I took a trip down to Salem to scope out the lunacy at the Capitol building today. During my roaming, I happened across Senator Floyd Przonski, who has been threatening to launch the gun registration and criminal victimization bills. During my questioning of the good senator, the Republican Senate leader, Ted Ferrioli, happened to catch some of this. I saw him smirking as he walked down the hall, and he ducked into a room. I overheard him telling the people in the room something along the lines of grilling Przonski with a camera. I turned around to pop my head into the room and introduce myself to Ferrioli and some of the other Republicans. Out of a courtesy to them, I was not going in camera blazing. However, Senator Ferrioli slammed the door in my face, and I went around to his office to lodge a complaint about that and to try to explain who I was and what I do, in hopes of getting off on a better foot. Senator Chuck Thompson happened to be standing right there as well. Here's a shot of Senator Ferrioli chumming it up with Ginny Burdick. As my brief meeting with Ferrioli's staffers was ending, I turned around to see this.
What on earth is this all about? I'm all right.
So right now he's being surrounded by police. There's like 4 or 5 police officers that have come into the room behind him.
Howdy, gentlemen. How you doing today? I'm doing just fine. Thank you very much.
Michael? Michael? Is that your name?
Possibly. Mr. Driver?
Yes.
Sergeant Kurt Driver was previously seen saying this to me as I was trying to question ex-Governor Kitzhaber.
I'm going to beat you with a board of your...
He just said, I'm going to beat you with a board. This is coming from a police officer, and he's undercover right now. He's guarding Governor Kitzhaber, which, as we all know, he's been in the news quite a bit. Anyway, he's in plain clothes. He's in a suit. By the way, he's rocking his suit without a tie right now. Interesting look. And he's saying that he's going to beat you with a board for recording in a public area. I'm looking right now in the video. He's standing on a public sidewalk. It's public property. Again, here's that whole concept. Number 1, recording public officials and performance of public duties. And then in addition to that, you are on public property where there is no expectation of privacy. This seems to be a recurring theme of this show. Maybe I should have named it that, but I think that maybe was a bit long-winded. Anyway, so the video goes on.
You just what? You said you're going to beat me with what?
For daring to question the corruption. Sergeant Driver has recently been demoted to General Patrol in the Capitol from his...
Oh, I wonder why. He just threatened to beat somebody with a board. I wonder what else he's done, what kind of conduct that Sergeant Kurt Driver of the Oregon State Police, I think. I'm guessing that's what this is. He's what else has he done? If he's done that, if he's threatening violence upon a citizen just for simply recording him while performing official duties in a public space, what else has he done? Is he the kind of officer that would just, I don't know, plant a bit of dope on somebody to get some probable cause, reasonable suspicion, something like that, some reason to arrest? This is where I have issues. We have people who are on power trips. We're going to see more of Mr. Kurt Driver and his power trip in the rest of this video here. Here it goes.
Previous gig as dignitary protection, where his job was literally to drive Kitzhaber's girlfriend's dog around.
Okay. Yes, that's me. I understand you have a concealed weapon?
Possibly.
I see your permit, please.
Okay, so... time out real fast, okay? Mr. Kurt Driver walks up to Laughing at Liberals and says, I understand that you have a concealed weapon. First of all, it's concealed. So how would you know? And why? Because he knows that he has a concealed carry permit, and he knows that Laughing at Liberals is a Second Amendment activist, but he doesn't know that he has a gun. The fact that you have a concealed carry permit is not reasonable suspicion that you have a gun. Therefore, they have the right to investigate and pat you down and demand your identification. But I digress. Let's see what he does. Because, just because he knows this guy and he knows that Laughing at Liberals is a gun activist, that shouldn't be probable cause, reasonable suspicion, and in fact it is not. So the video goes on. Let's see what Mr. Kurt Driver, Sergeant Kurt Driver does.
Do you have any evidence that I've committed a crime or anything, or do you just go around asking?
I don't need it to ask for.
Okay, let's comment on that for 1 second. He says he doesn't need it to ask for an ID, for your concealed carry permit. He doesn't need it to ask, and that's true. but it's not at the same time. And let's cover this real fast, all right? This is the double speak, the double crap that they do all the time. All right. You have a right to refuse when they're asking you to do something. You know, if they say, would you mind speaking with me for a minute? You could say, no, thank you, and walk away. You know, unless they're detaining you, at which point you'll find out very quickly if you try to walk away. You know, the correct answer to any question that a police officer has asked you is to ask another question. And that question is, am I being detained? Or why are you detaining me? If you can already tell that they're detaining you for some reason. Let's say, for example, they point a gun in your face. If they say, get on the ground, you know, something along those lines, you could be pretty assured that you're being detained because a gun's in your face, and the Supreme Court will back that up. But I digress. If they're asking you, can I see your identification, your concealed carry permit? I have reason to believe that you have a concealed carry or a concealed carried weapon. And if you ask them why do you have, what is your reason to believe? Do you see a weapon on me? Because it'll likely be concealed if it's a concealed weapon, right? So if they don't see it and they have no reasonable, articulatable suspicion that you have it, other than the fact that they know that you're a gun activist and that you have a concealed carry permit, that's not enough. That is not enough. That's not enough to demand it. That's not enough to do anything. But yeah, they can ask, and you can say no. And if you say no, you can tell them to go screw, and they can't do anything about it because you're in a public place, number one. They have no reasonable suspicion to search you, no probable cause that you've committed a crime. So there's nothing that they should be able to do. The video goes on.
Do you ask everybody if they have a CHL when they're coming through?
We think they do. I was told you had one. I was told.
Okay. He was told he has one. If they think that they have a CHL, is having a CHL probable cause? Is having a CHL, and for those of you who don't know what it's different around the country. Wherever you go, they may have a different name for it, but it's a concealed carry permit. That's what it is, a CHL out here. So the mere fact that you have a CHL, which I am not a fan of to begin with, I don't think we should have to have a permission slip from the government to assert a right to bear arms, okay? The whole concept is backwards. But now they're using this, us asking for permission. We're following the legal process. And now all of a sudden, because we followed the legal process, now that's being held against us. Oh, if we have reason to believe that you have a concealed carry permit, that must be probable cause or reasonable suspicion that you have a gun, and then I'm allowed to ask for that. No. You're not. That's not probable cause. It's not reasonable suspicion. And why would following a lawful process to get an identification, a little permit to say that I'm allowed to do what I'm already allowed to do, why would doing that in any way justify you searching me and treating me like a criminal? If anything, I'm a law-abiding citizen. I've done exactly what you've demanded that I do to assert the right that I already had. Get it through your thick skull. I don't need your permission.
Well, if you're told that I have one, then why do you need to ask me for it?
To see it.
Okay.
Oh, you're a sergeant, too. Oh, that's even better. You know, you're going to be on YouTube. Sergeant Driver. You can look for Sergeant Driver harasses citizen in Oregon Capitol. That'll probably be the title of the video.
Concealed weapon permit?
Possibly, but if you don't have evidence that I've, or reasonable suspicion that I'm done anything, then I don't have to show you anything. I know my rights as an individual.
Okay, let's take a walk, please.
Okay, so first thing, you know, and a lot of what I've heard, you know, people will comment on my video where I was unlawfully arrested by Vancouver, Washington Police Department. And, you know, for me, I personally have no issues speaking to police. I'll talk to police. You know, I will reserve my rights in every way, shape, or form. I'm not going to give you my identification. You know, why would I do that? If you don't have any reasonable suspicion, I'm not going to give you my ID. I'll talk with you. If I feel like answering the question, if I don't feel like it's too invasive, or if I don't feel like you're conducting an investigation on me, perhaps I will cooperate and talk with you. But, you know, in this situation, I want to just note, this officer said, will you take a walk with me, please? He asked him to walk. And this is because the officer did not have the legal authority to command him to do anything, because he wasn't violating any laws. So if an officer says, "Hey, will you come with me? You know, can we go over here? Or can you do this? Can I see your ID? Can I search your vehicle? Can I do all the?" They don't ask for permission for things that they have the right to do. All right, they don't, and to say no to them is not going to really make your situation much worse. I mean, especially, you know, if they're trying to conduct a search on you, if they've decided that they're going to search you, you're getting searched. I mean, that's about it. All you can really do is hope that you have the evidence and documentation, and you say, "I don't consent to any searches." That's all you can do. But if these people decide that they want to arrest you, even if they don't have probable cause, reasonable suspicion, you may beat the charges, but you won't beat the ride necessarily. If they decide to arrest you, you'll have your day in court, and that's all there is to it. Now, a lot of people say, "Hey, why not just cooperate with police?" You know, I was out, for example, I was asserting my Second Amendment right, open carrying, and they arrested me. And before that, you know, the big problem that people have is, even though that open carry is legal in this state and I wasn't threatening anyone, and all the witness testimony said that I wasn't threatening anyone, so, you know, I should be all good, right? The people some people, you know, on YouTube, you got the trolls out there, but some people had issues, and they couldn't just understand why I wouldn't give up my ID. You know, what I asked them, "Do you think any crimes are being committed?" They said, "No crimes are being committed that we know of." Well, then you don't need my ID. You know, I'm not going to give you my identification if you're just asking for it, if you are not detaining me. And anyway, I'm making this about me. I'm not trying to make it about me, but anyway, this is kind of the point. Is that, you know, you don't have to cooperate. You don't. They're public servants, and the only time they have the authority to pull you to the side and force you to do anything is if you have committed a crime. They have reasonable suspicion or probable cause. I'm beating that into your guy's head. I hope that you get it. I'm sure all of you know it by now. But anyway, the video goes on.
You might want to turn around before you trip.
No, I want to make sure I got you on film.
Okay. Keep walking.
In fact, this battery's running a little slow. I'm going to pull out another camera. Don't worry, I'm not pulling out an MP5 or anything.
Keep walking. You're going to come on.
Hold on, making sure the other camera boots up.
He's turning on his other camera right now. It's about to switch, and you'll get like a little loop.
So I'm curious, why were 4 officers coming up to see? Coming up to see me there?
I'm curious why you won't show your concealed weapon permit. Because if you don't show me your concealed weapon permit, you're going to be asked to leave the building.
But what makes you think I have a concealed weapon on me? Oh, and you're a lieutenant, Lieutenant Duval. Okay.
On hand supervising this encounter was Lieutenant Steve Duval, who had previously been dispatched by Kit Sauber to harass fellow videographer Daylight Disinfectant. Also,
by the way, for those of you who don't know, Daylight Disinfectant, he's been on our show very frequently. He's been on, I think, 4 or 5 times now. It's Dan Sandini. I believe he was on last episode, if I'm remembering correctly. And you can check him out at youtube.com/Daylight Disinfectant. YouTube.com/Daylight Disinfectant, or at Daylight Dis on Twitter.
For having the audacity to question Kit Sauber's corrupt practices. Lieutenant Duval also oversaw a case where a dead body was found, but rather than contact the family, the Oregon State Police went to the media first, and the family learned of their loved one's death by watching the news. Lieutenant Duval's office can be reached at 503-986-1122.
Again, that was 503-986-1122. If you want to talk to them and let them know what you think about this fine police work that they're conducting, they're just harassing law-abiding citizens and kicking them out of the Capitol building without probable cause or reasonable suspicion. They're demanding papers from people who aren't even suspected of violating the law. And in fact, what's even funny here, the most comical and ridiculous part about this whole thing is that they know that he has a concealed carry permit. That's why they're harassing him in the first place. They know he has the permit, and then they're using that to harass him because he won't show it, but they didn't have the right to ask for it in the first place, or at least to force him to produce it. And now they're trying to kick him out of the building for not producing something that they know he has. Why do they even ask for it if they know he has it? See, that's kind of a pretty funny conundrum. It's like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? If you know he has it, why bother asking for it? Right? if you know he has it. So the fact that they ask it at least has to allude to the fact that they may not know that he has it for sure, right? So if you don't know that he has it for sure, how can you use that as justification to demand his ID or kick him out of the building? How is that reasonable suspicion or probable cause? It's not. 503-986-1122. Again, if you want to let this department know exactly what you think about this kind of police work, again, 503-986-1122. 503-986-1122.
Cool. You'll be in the video too.
Great. Start walking
I'm
out
curious.
or show me your
Who called you about me? I'm just curious. If I show you my card, will you answer all my questions?
You show me your.
Okay, so I'll let you guys go to the video to finish up the rest of it. It's at youtube.com/laughing@liberals. Please subscribe to him. He's a good guy, makes quality videos. He's a premier citizen journalist in the Pacific Northwest, and I'm sure he would appreciate your support and subscribing. So feel free to share the video as well. And we're going to go ahead and wrap up today's show. I think we covered quite a bit of stuff, and first of all, I just want to say thank you for those of you who are with us here and listening to the podcast. Those of you who tune in week after week, I really do seriously appreciate your continued support. You guys are the reason why we do this, and it means so much to me that you guys continue listening. And, members of the MacPack, you guys are the tip of the spear. Thank you so much. If you've made it this far in the podcast, I would greatly appreciate it if you would, one, subscribe to us, follow us on Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. Number two, if you could share and download the podcast, talk about it with your friends and family, get the message out, I would definitely appreciate it. And don't forget to tune in next week. We broadcast every single Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at OnTheMoveShow.com. We also simulcast on HaywireGulch.com. And again, we got a lot of different stuff out there in the Twitter sphere, the internet sphere. You can check us out at OnTheMoveShow.com. Follow us at Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. Like us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. Feel free to send us any recommended articles that you want us to talk about, any kind of topics. I'm happy to bring them up there. You can message us on there. You can subscribe to us on YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow and follow us on Twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow. Please feel free to message us on there as well. And as always, know your rights, assert your rights, and get on the move.